Have you ever looked around and felt the invisible weight of power pressing on every choice, every room, every conversation? Some seem to command respect without effort, while others fade, ignored, no matter how hard they try. It's not luck, it's not charm, it's something deeper, an ancient understanding of how people truly move, what they fear, and what they follow. More than 5 centuries ago, one man stripped away the polite illusions of society and revealed the raw mechanics behind influence. His words were so sharp that his book was banned, yet so enduring that kings, generals, and modern leaders still keep it within reach. Not because it flatters human nature, but because it exposes it. Whether you seek to rise or simply to avoid being crushed, you cannot remain blind to these truths. To ignore them is to walk unarmed into a battlefield. As the old saying warns, it is better to be a warrior in a garden than a gardener at war. Stay with me, because what follows are 8 principles that can change the way you see power forever. As we step into the first chapter, picture this. A river that has carved its path for centuries suddenly meets a rockslide. The water does not argue. It does not beg the mountain to move. It bends, it shifts, it finds another way. This is the quiet strength of adaptability, the art of changing shape without losing essence. Now imagine a man who clings to one plan as if it was sacred law. The world shifts, seasons turn, storms rise, and because he refuses to bend, the first great gust will break him. Seneca once warned that we must adapt ourselves to circumstances as we do to the sea when the wind changes direction. To ignore this truth is to invite ruin. Think of the Empire of Rome itself. It did not grow mighty by one strategy alone. It absorbed new customs, new gods, new lands, and made them its own. This was its power, but also its test. When it could no longer adapt, it began to decay from within. Every age has its Romes. Every life has its turning points. The Stoic sees them for what they are, not betrayals of our path, but invitations to sharpen our course. Look at the world you live in now. A company once mailed DVDs in red envelopes. That was its beginning. When storms of change came, it shifted into streaming, then producing its own stories, shaping culture itself. The rigid competitor laughed at first, and later vanished. The flexible one survived. The lesson is as old as Marcus Aurelius, and as modern as your phone. The one who adjusts becomes the one who endures. But adaptability is not cowardice. It is not the surrender of principle. It is the discipline of choosing action over attachment. Epictetus told his students, "Do not wish for events to happen as you want them, but wish them to happen as they do, and you will go well." This is not passive acceptance. It is the strength of the warrior who trains with whatever weapon the battlefield offers. If the sword breaks, he fights with his hands. If his hands fail, he fights with his mind. I remember a craftsman who lost his livelihood when machines replaced his trade. For a season he cursed the change, drinking bitterness like water. Then one day he chose differently. He learned the very machines that had displaced him. In time, he became not just a worker, but a master technician, sought out for his skill. His life did not end when the old path closed. It was reborn because he adapted. Ask yourself, how many times have you been clinging to a plan long after it has expired? How many times have you prayed for the wind to change instead of adjusting your sails? The Stoic does not wait for the world to match his design. He learns the rhythm of the world and moves with it, like a dancer keeping step with an unseen drum. So let me tell you this in plain words. No matter how good your plan A seems, it is never enough. Keep a plan B, a plan C, and most of all, keep the ability to shift when the ground beneath you breaks. Life is not a straight road. It is a series of bends, storms, and detours. The wise man does not curse them, he walks them. And here lies the heart of the first principle. Whosoever desires constant success must change his conduct with the times, bend like the river. Endure like the tree that sways but does not snap. Hold your principles, but not your methods. Adaptability is not just a tactic, it is survival, it is freedom, it is strength hidden in plain sight. And it is only the beginning. Because from here, we step into a truth even sharper, the ancient balance between fear and love, and what it really means to command respect. Moving into the second chapter, imagine standing before a crowd where every face watches, but not every heart stands with you. Some smile because it is easy, some nod because the moment asks for it. But when the storm breaks, when the weight of decision falls, only a few remain. This is where the old tension emerges, the choice between being loved or being feared. Machiavelli once said, "It is better to be feared than loved if you cannot be both." At first, it cuts the ear like something cruel. But look closer, and you will see it speaks not of cruelty, but of clarity. For love in the eyes of many is fickle. It flows when the sun is warm and retreats when clouds appear. Fear, when rooted in respect, anchors loyalty deeper than mere affection. Think of the seasons of your own life. How many times have those who praised you in times of ease stepped back when hardship came? How often has admiration turned silent when true demands were placed on others? Marcus Aurelius observed that the opinion of 10,000 men is of no value if none of them know anything about the subject. Their love is noise, their respect is substance. In the world of leadership, this truth is seen again and again. When a leader seeks only to be liked, discipline weakens, promises are delayed, effort becomes casual. Those under him measure their loyalty as one might measure the weather, shifting with comfort, avoiding the cold wind of real responsibility. But when a leader commands respect, when the thought of failing him carries weight, performance rises. The standard is no longer optional, it is lived. Look at the story of Steve Jobs. He was not known for gentle words or warm approval, yet under his demanding presence, Apple forged creations that reshaped the world. His team feared not his rage, but his disappointment. That fear was not terror, it was the weight of high expectation. To miss the mark was to feel the sting of letting down a vision larger than oneself. And that pressure, though sharp, carved excellence. Fear here is not the trembling before a tyrant. It is the respect that keeps men from drifting into mediocrity. Epictetus taught, "If you want to improve, be content to be thought foolish and stupid with regard to external things." To demand respect often means sacrificing popularity. To uphold principle often means losing favor. But the fruit of that sacrifice is a strength that outlives the shallow applause of the crowd. Imagine a commander leading his soldiers through rough terrain. If they merely love him, they may cheer in the camp but falter on the march. If they respect him, if they know that discipline is enforced and standards are not broken, they will press forward even when fatigue cuts into their bones. Love may fill the air with words. Fear, born of respect, fills the ground with action. The Stoic way teaches us to prefer the weight of truth to the sweetness of illusion. To be both loved and respected is ideal. But if the world forces a choice, choose the one that endures. Love may desert you when you need it most. Respect stays because it is tied not to mood but to order, not to favor but to standard. So let this truth settle deeply. Seek not the shallow comfort of affection, when what is required is strength. Better to be respected and sometimes misunderstood than to be adored and quietly ignored. And from here, we step into another paradox even sharper. The need to be both the fox and the lion, to blend cunning with courage if you wish to endure in the game of power. Advancing to the third chapter, picture a hunter moving through a forest at dawn. The ground is damp, the air thick with silence, and every step could spring a hidden snare. To survive, he must see what others miss, the faint shift of leaves, the unnatural stillness of birds, the quiet signal of danger. But sight alone will not save him. When the wolf leaps from the shadows, no amount of cunning will matter unless he also carries the strength to strike. This is the union of fox and lion. One without the other is incomplete. The fox alone becomes clever but fragile, forever weaving tricks but unable to stand when brute force confronts him. The lion alone becomes strong but blind, charging into traps that could have been avoided with sharper vision. Machiavelli's wisdom is harsh but enduring. Success demands both, and Stoicism agrees. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "You must build your life action by action and be satisfied if each one achieves its goal. But to act rightly, one must first see clearly, and to see without acting is cowardice dressed as wisdom." Now think of the modern battlefield, business, politics, technology, even the private struggles of a single life. How many men lose because they cling to one nature only? The cunning man who spots opportunity yet never moves, waiting until the moment has passed. The brute who acts in strength but without foresight, burning his energy on empty battles. Both fall. The Stoic path demands balance, the eye to detect and the hand to strike. Consider a vivid example. Elon Musk's acquisition of Twitter, mocked at first as reckless, shows both sides of this principle. At the beginning, he moved with the craft of a fox, testing, positioning, anticipating reactions others did not see. Critics laughed. They called it foolish, even suicidal. But then, once control was his, he shifted to the lion. Swift changes, bold moves, decisive cuts. Whether one agrees with his choices or not, the truth is clear. He saw the trap where others saw only comfort, and he had the force to break it once the moment arrived. The Stoics teach us not to seek safety in one identity. To cling to cleverness alone is to hide from confrontation. To cling to strength alone is to stumble into avoidable ruin. Seneca warned, "The man who does not plan long ahead will find trouble at his door." Yet he also said, "Sometimes even to live is an act of courage." What does this mean for us? See the trap, yes, but when the time comes, roar. Think of your own life. Perhaps you have been too much the fox, seeing danger, sensing betrayal, mapping every possible outcome, but never stepping forward when it mattered. Or perhaps you have been too much the lion, bold in speech, quick to act, but too blind to see the subtle hands pulling strings against you. Both extremes end in weakness. To outlast, you must carry both masks in one face. The fox gives you vision. The lion gives you presence. Together, they form a leader who cannot be cornered. The fox knows when to wait. The lion knows when waiting is death. And when both meet in one soul, others pause. They measure their steps more carefully around you. So let this truth sharpen you. One must be a fox to recognize traps, and a lion to frighten wolves. Without cunning, you walk into chains. Without strength, you cannot break them. With both, you walk free. And as we leave this lesson, remember, the world will not only test how you see and how you strike, it will also test what image you cast before others. For in the realm of power, perception is often stronger than fact. Here's where the fourth chapter opens, with a simple truth that cuts deep. The world rarely sees what you are. It sees what you appear to be, faces and shadows, gestures and tone, the frame you carry into every room. This is what speaks first. And though few ever touch your true essence, they will judge you as if they know it fully. That is the weight of perception. Now imagine two men walking down the same street at night. One walks upright, eyes steady, steps deliberate. The other walks, hunched, distracted, lost in the glow of a small screen. Which one does the predator choose? The answer is obvious. Danger moves toward weakness. Even without a word spoken, even without an action taken, the body declares the soul's posture. The Stoics knew this well. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts. If you dwell in weakness, weakness will paint your form for all to see. If you dwell in strength, it radiates before you speak." This is not about pretending. It is not about crafting a mask to deceive. It is about alignment, the inner state brought outward with clarity. Epictetus reminded his students, "Don't explain your philosophy, embody it." That means you do not need to declare your discipline, your dignity, your courage. They are visible in how you carry yourself, in how you stand, in how you speak few words but anchor them with presence. Look at leaders who command rooms without raising their voice. Often it is not what they say, but how they arrive. Their posture, their calm, their deliberate tone all communicate strength long before logic enters the conversation. I recall a man who rose in a boardroom filled with noise and politics. He did not argue. He stood, adjusted his jacket, and with one pause, silenced the room. His words were measured, his gaze steady. The decision fell his way, not because he shouted, but because his presence carried weight. That is the power of perception. Think also of the digital world where appearances are magnified. A single image can frame how thousands perceive you. Is it vanity to care? No, it is discipline. The Stoic does not seek empty praise, but he does not ignore how his stance, his words, his silence ripple through others. To neglect perception is to hand power to those who use it without conscience. To master it is to shield yourself while advancing with quiet strength. Seneca once wrote, "We are more often frightened than hurt, and we suffer more from imagination than from reality." And perception is precisely this imagination, the way others interpret what they see. The wise man does not control every thought of others, but he controls what he allows them to witness. He does not stumble through life careless of his image. He shapes it with intent, knowing it is both shield and spear. Ask yourself, what do others see before they know you? Do they see a man scattered and unsure, or a presence grounded, calm, unshaken? Do they hear the rustle of weakness or the silence of strength? You cannot choose every judgment, but you can choose how you walk into the world. And here lies the heart of the lesson. Perception is power. It can protect, it can command, it can warn others not to cross your line. It is not about being false, it is about being deliberate. The world will see you whether you prepare or not. Better to step forward with intention. Carry yourself as if your soul has weight, because it does. And as we move onward, consider this. Power is not only about image or force. Sometimes it is won not by collision at all, but by strategy. By knowing when deception spares you, battles brute strength cannot. That is where we turn next. From here we enter the 5th chapter, and the lesson is as sharp as a blade drawn in silence. Machiavelli wrote, "Never attempt to win by force what can be won by deception." At first glance, the word cuts harshly, as if it were a call to dishonor. But in truth, it is not about lies. It is about wisdom. It is about conserving strength for the battles that matter, and never wasting the fire of your spirit in struggles that could be won with clarity and cunning. Think of war. The fool charges headlong into the fortified wall, hammering until his bones shatter. The wise man finds the gate left unguarded, or waits for hunger to hollow the enemy from within. One spends his blood for pride, the other spends his patience for victory. Seneca once said, "Brave men rejoice in adversity, just as brave soldiers triumph in war." Yet even the bravest soldier knows not every strike should be delivered with the sword. Often the silent move, the unexpected step, is stronger than brute force. Now imagine a marketplace in the modern age. American car makers once towered like giants, building machines of steel and size. And into this land walked Toyota, not with massive vehicles to wrestle the giants head-on, but with something subtle, almost unthreatening. Smaller cars, fuel efficient, a niche the giants had ignored. The move looked modest, even harmless. But over time, that small path carved a river through stone. Toyota did not roar into the fight. It slipped in through the quiet door, and years later stood as the largest automaker in the world. That is not deceit. That is strategy aligned with endurance. The Stoics understood this long before markets and machines. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. To strike with force at everything outside is to waste yourself. To act with foresight, to choose when to engage and when to step aside, that is to use your mind as shield and sword at once." I recall a man in a heated argument at work. His rival raised his voice, slammed his fists, tried to dominate with volume and force. The man didn't meet noise with noise. He let the storm pass, then unfolded a single sheet of numbers he had prepared. Quiet, simple, undeniable. The room fell silent. He won not with anger, but with preparation. His strength was not in how loud he roared, but in how firmly the truth stood behind him. So ask yourself, how many of your battles have you fought out of pride rather than purpose? How many times have you swung with force where patience would have delivered more? Not every fight deserves your strength. Not every obstacle deserves your blood. The Stoic path is not to avoid conflict, but to choose the form of conflict that leaves you stronger when it ends. And here is the heart of this principle. Never fight when strategy can win. Never exhaust yourself where positioning can deliver the same outcome. Force is the tool of the desperate. Strategy is the weapon of the wise. Walk with this truth. Hold your strength in reserve, and let wisdom carry you forward. Because the next lesson is sharper still, the power of timing, and why striking too late is no different than never striking at all. At this stage we arrive at the 6th chapter, where the silence before action is as dangerous as the action itself. Picture a soldier who sees the enemy exposed but hesitates, waiting for the perfect moment that never returns. By the time his courage arrives, the opening is gone. The enemy has moved, the advantage wasted. Timing is the difference between a strike that ends the war and a strike that lands in empty air. Machiavelli said it with ruthless simplicity. The wise man does at once what the fool does finally. The words sting because they reveal a weakness we all know: hesitation. Many people see the truth. Many even reach the same conclusion, but the world crowns those who act while others are still thinking. Now imagine the sun setting on a battlefield. Some wait too long, sharpening their blades until the light is gone. By the time they charge, night has hidden their enemy and the moment is lost. Others step at once, not recklessly, but decisively. They move with the water instead of against it. Seneca once wrote, "While we waste our time hesitating and postponing, life is slipping away." He was not telling us to rush. He was telling us to see when the window opens and not to let it close. Look at history. In every era, ideas are born into many minds, yet only a few act first. The rest watch from behind, praising or criticizing, but always too late. The first one through the door sets the terms. The rest must adapt. In war, this is obvious. In commerce, it is just as true. When Toyota seized a niche others ignored, they moved not because the idea was secret, but because they acted before the giants awakened. Timing is not about genius, it is about readiness. I recall a man who dreamed of starting his own craft. For years he spoke of it, refined the plan, waited for the stars to align. Another man, with half the resources and less certainty, began with what he had. Years later, one was still speaking. The other had built an empire. Both saw the same road. One walked it. The Stoics remind us that control rests not in the endless calculation of events, but in the choice to act with courage when the opening appears. Epictetus said, "First say to yourself what you would be, and then do what you have to do." To know without doing is to live half a life. The wise man does not confuse delay with safety. He knows that opportunity ages quickly, and hesitation is often more fatal than error. Ask yourself, how many doors have you seen open only to watch them close again because you lingered? How many words unsaid, moves unmade, have cost you more than a mistake would have? The fool believes time is endless. The wise know it slips through the hands like sand, and therefore seize it without apology. Do not mistake this for recklessness. Stoic timing is not impulse. It is trained awareness. It is the eye that sees the moment and the hand that does not tremble when it comes. Courage is nothing if it arrives too late. Precision is nothing if it never leaves the mind. So carry this with you. Being right is never enough. The world is full of those who saw clearly but acted too late. The crown does not go to the one who knows, but to the one who knows and moves. And as we step from this lesson, keep watch, for the next truth waits not in speed alone, but in the company you choose to keep, and how the circle around you shapes the path ahead. Entering the 7th chapter, imagine a fire burning in the center of a camp. The flames rise not only because of the wood itself, but because of the hands that tend it. One man adds dry branches, another throws in wet leaves, a third smothers it with sand. By sunrise, you know the nature of the fire, not just by its own strength, but by the company it keeps. So it is with a ruler. So it is with you. Machiavelli warned that the first way to measure the wisdom of a leader is by looking at the people who stand beside him. The Stoics would agree. Marcus Aurelius did not rule alone. He listened carefully, but he chose carefully too. He knew that if he filled his circle with flatterers, he would be blinded. If he allowed the corrupt to whisper, their poison would spread. He kept men of discipline and reason near him, for he understood that character is reflected and reinforced by the company we keep. Now look at your own life. Who sharpens you? Who dulls you? Epictetus once said, "The key is to keep company only with people who uplift you, whose presence calls forth your best. If you walk among the idle, you will be pulled into idleness. If you walk among the bitter, bitterness will stain your thoughts. But if you walk with those who live by principle, their strength becomes your shield." There was a young craftsman I once knew. His talent was bright, but his circle was dark. He spent nights with men who mocked ambition, who numbed their hours with drink, who laughed at discipline. Over time, his skill dulled, his fire shrank. Later, when he broke free and surrounded himself with those who rose early, who worked hard, who held one another accountable, his craft returned with force. His circle had changed, and so had his destiny. We fool ourselves when we think we are immune. No man walks untouched by those at his side. Even the strongest oak bends with the wind that constantly presses against it. Seneca said, "Associate with people who are likely to improve you. To do otherwise is to accept slow corrosion. It is to allow the whispers of weakness to undo years of discipline." Ask yourself hard questions. Do the voices around you remind you of your duty, or do they soothe you into comfort? Do they speak of honor or of shortcuts? Do they rise when you rise, or do they pull you back each time you advance? You can measure your own path by looking at the ground your companions walk on. If it is firm, you are safe. If it is soft with mud, you will sink together. This is not only about friends, it is about advisors, colleagues, even family. You cannot always choose who appears in your life, but you can choose how close you let them stand. Guard your inner circle like a fortress. Let few pass its gates. Better a small circle of steady men than a crowd of flatterers who cheer while leading you toward ruin. So here lies the truth of this principle. Your circle is not just background. It is your mirror, your echo, your shadow. To manage it poorly is to invite downfall. To manage it wisely is to multiply your strength beyond what you alone could carry. And as we move forward, remember, no circle, no counsel, no alliance matters if you lack the courage to act. For power does not lie in preservation of what is, but in the decision to overthrow it when the time demands. That is where the final principle leads. Advancing to the 8th chapter, the air feels heavier, as if the room itself is waiting for a choice to be made. To stand still is also a decision. To preserve the ground beneath your feet may seem safe, yet in truth, it is the most dangerous gamble of all. Machiavelli's words strike like a hammer. I am not interested in preserving the status quo. I want to overthrow it. At first it sounds like rebellion, but listen deeper and you will hear the call not of chaos, but of decisive action. Now imagine a fortress left untouched for years, its walls once strong, its gates once proud. Yet with every season of neglect, the mortar cracks, the iron rusts, the guards grow complacent. From a distance it still looks imposing. But to the eye of an enemy, it is ripe for conquest. The danger was not in battle. The danger was in refusing to adapt, in believing that what once worked would always protect. So it is with our lives, our work, our choices. To cling blindly to the current state is to invite collapse. The Stoics understood this truth. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You must build up your life action by action. Each choice is a stone, each decision a wall, but walls must be rebuilt, not worshipped. To preserve without improvement is to rot while pretending to stand." Seneca warned that life slips away not because of sudden catastrophe, but because of wasted days repeating themselves. To delay decision is itself a decision, one that costs more than courage ever could. Think of those who shaped the world. They did not wait for permission. They did not cling to what was comfortable. When the ground grew weak, they struck it open to build something new. In business, in art, in leadership, the pattern is the same. The bold who risk a calculated step forward surpass the cautious who remain rooted. It is not recklessness. It is resolve. The Stoic does not throw himself into chaos for vanity's sake. He acts with measure, but he acts. Take the story of innovators across ages. Once, every home lived by candlelight. Then came lamps, then electricity. Each step mocked at first, yet each step remade the world. Yet who remembers the names of the men who clung to candles? History keeps the names of those who dared to replace them. So it is with every choice before you. Will you protect the candle, or will you kindle the fire that blinds the old world and births the new? I recall a man who stayed in the same trade long after its peak, telling himself it was safer to remain than to risk change. His colleagues who dared to pivot, who studied new skills and seized fresh ground, advanced while he stood still. In time he was not safe at all. He was obsolete. His tragedy was not failure, but hesitation. Epictetus taught, "First say to yourself what you would be, and then do what you have to do." It is the doing that separates the living from the stagnant. Decisions are not always comfortable. They rarely come with perfect clarity, but they carve the shape of destiny. To avoid them is to be shaped by forces outside yourself. To seize them is to master the only ground you truly own, your own will. So here is the final weight of this principle. It is better to act boldly and refine as you go than to polish hesitation until the moment is gone. The enemy of greatness is not failure, it is preservation without purpose. And as we close these 8 principles, remember this: power is not granted by birth or by favor. It is built in silence, defended with discipline, and proven in decisive moments. The question now is not whether these truths endure, they have for centuries. The question is whether you will step forward and embody them, or remain still while others rise. Machiavelli's true gift was not in schemes or deception, but in revealing how power truly moves beneath the surface of human affairs. Stripped of illusions, his principles endure after 5 centuries because they speak to what remains constant in human nature and the order of the world. Whether you are shaping your path, building your craft, leading others, or simply protecting your ground, these lessons remain as steady as iron. The question is not whether these principles hold power. The question is which one you will take into your own hands first. Power is not found in wishing or waiting. It shows itself in how you act, in how you adapt to the turning of events, in the respect you command by holding your standard, and in the courage to act when others falter. Share in the comments with 2 words: your choice. Let this be the start of your own reflection. If these truths strengthened you, consider subscribing so you can keep walking with me through more of these timeless paths. Each step builds upon the last, and the next may be the one that sharpens your edge. Remember, wisdom is never a single destination. It is the road itself. Walk it with discipline and walk it with strength.